YouTube is about to be turned upside down by a revolutionary new AI writing tool. But it's not just another AI tool like a ChatGPT or Claude, or insert random AI tool here. This tool can save you hours of time and effort by generating engaging scripts 10 times faster than ever before. Developed by Software Dev and Entrepreneur Guild, Subscriber is a script writing tool that helps you write your video scripts based on what's already working with other videos. And in this video, we'll be digging deep into how Subscriber works behind the scenes, how powerful this tool can be, and we're going to be discussing some of the ethics behind AI writing for content. How did you figure out that script writing was a problem that needed to be worked on exactly? Like, what kind of sparked that interest? Because, like, there's a difference between, like, I enjoy YouTube like half of the world, and then I see that these freelancers or creators are just struggling with this in the first place. Like, how did you kind of stumble upon that being an issue that you wanted to work on?
So my last company was venture backed. I did the whole Silicon Valley tech startup thing, raised a lot of money, had a lot of employees, and it was a very fun, challenging experience, fast growth company. And I ultimately, realized that this time around, I want to try something a little bit different. And I don't want to build a large company. I want to build a profitable company that isn't necessarily trying to grow, just to grow and take over the world. And I saw an opportunity in YouTube when I was learning initially about this concept of like an automated, YouTube automated channel. And I like the idea of the passive income because as an entrepreneur who's like working super hard all the time in my businesses, I liked the idea of setting up a team, setting a goal, a mission, and then being able to basically just kind of direct them with a minimal amount of time. And I started looking into this and of course realized that the people who talk about this the most are scammers, and that it actually is way harder than it seems in order to create a successful YouTube channel. And I wanted to get my hands dirty, so I started creating a couple of channels and playing around with the concept, hiring a team of people, and I quickly realized this is hard. This is really, really hard. And so one of the biggest challenges I had was script writing, because my goal from day one was to have this passive sort of approach where, I would bring a team together and they would do the work. And I found that with the script writers I hired, I was having to spend a lot of time reviewing the scripts and offering feedback. It was around that time that I started researching, like, what are the YouTube engagement tactics that people use? YouTube is so fascinating to me because unlike Netflix, unlike a movie theater, you are constantly being bombarded with distractions. If you turn on a video and in the first 20 seconds you don't like it, you leave. You don't do that. People don't do that with a Netflix show. They'll at least give it 5 minutes before switching to something else. And so I found it super fascinating that there are these different engagement tactics out there. And then I realized with the time that I've spent in AI, which we can talk more about, I realized, hey, this is a problem that AI can actually help with, because what AI is really good at is not so much creative writing, although it's getting better at that, but it's really good at analysis. And if there are certain formulas and frameworks that people can use to create, engaging content for YouTube, then me as a software developer could create a workflow that is optimal for, producing this type of content, and then layering on analysis on top of it that helps you figure out areas where you could improve your content. So that's the way that I'm approaching it. And also, something else I forgot to mention before, like with how I got into YouTube. So my wife works in the movie industry in the United States. This past year, there's been no work. There were strikes, and then now things are slowly starting to pick back up. And it's because there's challenges with the business model of Hollywood. And, I totally sympathize with everyone in the industry, the challenges they have. I believe that there's always going to be a huge place for the type of super high quality content that Hollywood produces, but you cannot ignore the growth of YouTube in the face of the challenges that Hollywood has experienced with their business model. And YouTube's business model is not broken. What's interesting is that it's more similar to the old Hollywood model, which was like broadcast TV, in that, it's primarily sponsored by ads, although there's a little bit of supplemental income from YouTube Premium. And I just looked at this and I said, as an entrepreneur, I like to follow trends, and the trend is people watching more YouTube. I think I saw a study a couple of months ago where they interviewed teenagers and they said, which social networks do you use? 70 something percent said TikTok and 90% said YouTube. So YouTube is the most popular social network among teenagers, which of course is the next generation.
I did think, I want to know your thoughts on something, because yesterday was really big news about OpenAI Sora. And a lot of the comments I saw were like, well, I didn't expect this for like the next 5 years. And that was a lot of YouTube video editors saying this. And again, you don't have to know 100% because it's all just predictions. But how do you feel about writing in that scenario? Like whether it's like writing AI in Hollywood, which is something I saw Disney was trying to do during the strikes and probably a lot of other companies. But to me, I've always held down that writing is hard with AI because it's not really taking creative ideas and elements and putting it into storytelling. At least for me, if right now anyway, I could tell if an AI wrote a script. Or I could tell if an AI wrote a full-fledged Marvel movie, even though some of them are pretty bad recently. Like for you, long-winded way of saying,
Yeah.
like, what are your thoughts about writing an AI in the future based on what we saw yesterday?
Well, yesterday there was another big announcement, which was Gemini 1.5 Pro. And if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you, if you're at all interested in AI, to find the video demos that they put out. They have them on their YouTube channel, but also probably if you just Google it, you can find those videos. And one of the things that they actually demo is creative writing capability. And it was actually quite good. So it wasn't a YouTube script they were creating, but it was vastly better than what I've seen from ChatGPT. One of the main differences that I saw was that they varied the sentence length. So the model varied the sentence length and wrote a little bit more like a person who's speaking directly. And I saw a video from a YouTube channel called AI Explained, I believe, that this guy actually created some writing output that was fairly good at first glance. Now, I didn't read the whole thing because it was in a short video, but then he copied and pasted it into GPT-0, which is a AI writing detector, and it did not detect it at all. So I think that we're getting better on all of these technologies. Me as a software developer, like that's always been in the past 20 years, that's been a privileged class of people that, there's always software development work that needs to be done. If you're in this industry, there's always demand. But we're looking at a scenario where like, the AIs are getting quite good at writing code. Like they're probably better at writing code than they are at creative writing. And so do you look at this and say, do I look at this and say, that's the end of my career? Well, no, because the way that I think about it is that it's ultimately like I'm still creating software if I use AI to write the code. It's just that instead of coding in some obscure language intended directly for software development, I'm just coding using human words and phrases. And I still have to understand the structure of what I'm trying to accomplish, all of the different decisions and trade-offs, and have that in my head and give very specific instructions to the AI. So it is the same thing with creative writing, with video, where you need to have a vision and you need to instruct the computer on how to solve it. No, I think there's this point in the future where people talk about artificial general intelligence or AGI, where ultimately this includes advanced reasoning to where humans aren't really needed to kind of, watch over and direct the work that's being done. But no one can predict what exactly that's going to look like or when exactly it'll arrive. So I don't spend much time thinking about that. I think about today, tomorrow, in the next year or two, how do you succeed with AI and or in face of AI? And it's really just by getting better at understanding how the tools work, because at the end of the day, that's what they are. They're just tools.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So that's a great transition into just what are the key things that differentiate subscriber. Am I saying that right, by the way? Is it
Yeah,
pronounced subscriber?
subscriber.
Just making sure. So what are the key features that differentiate subscriber from the other AI writing tools out there? Because, yeah, again, things are moving kind of fast, in which a year ago, for me, all I saw was ChatGPT, Claude, a little bit of Perplexity, but that's more of a research tool. But now there's like things called type.ai, which I like to use from time to time. There's also this tool called Lex, and everyone's just kind of creating these AI writing tools. So how does Subscriber differentiate itself for YouTubers?
I think that context and workflow are the two important factors. So the context meaning subscriber cares about your YouTube channel. The reason it's called subscriber is not so you can grow more subscribers. It's so that you can have your subscribers in mind when you're creating content. That's ultimately the way that I think about that word and its relation to what the product does. So the first thing that you do when you sign up for a subscriber is enter your channel, and the app will then look at all the videos on your channel, the metadata, and try and understand more about your audience and who you're creating content for. And you literally can't do anything until that analysis is complete, because everything that the app does is based on that. So that's an important point. And the second one is workflow. YouTube script writing is just a very specific workflow. So this isn't an AI thing. This is just more of a, having dedicated software for a specific series of steps that you might perform. So with YouTube and the workflow that I'm designing within Subscriber, which could change over time based on the feedback that people give me. But right now, the way it works is if you're creating a new script, you enter in a few key details like the topic of the script, your unique angle, your audience. So it'll populate just kind of an audience snippet that you can then customize if you're trying to go after a slightly different audience from your broad audience on your channel. And then you enter in a few more details. And the next thing is what? Not the script, the packaging. Because if you care about YouTube script writing, you care about engagement and people sticking around, right? But in order to keep people sticking around, you have to deliver on the packaging. And so the packaging being the title and thumbnail, you need to kind of have that idea sorted before you can create a good script. And so Subscriber starts there with helping you think through potential title and thumbnail combos. And it's not an AI image generation tool, at least not now or anytime in the near future. That's not really my focus. But helping you think through the ideas for what those thumbnails could be and relating them back to the titles, because you want the title and thumbnail to be, in relation to one another or complementing one another rather than just conveying the exact same information. So that is the first part of the workflow, or this, I guess, the second part of the workflow. And then the next part is thinking about your hook. How are you starting this video? How do you keep people engaged? And then just focusing on that part, because the hook is like the setup for the entire video. And then the rest of the video is the, as George Blackman would say, the grand payoff, where throughout the entire video, you're fulfilling the promise that you made to the viewer that if they continue watching, they will get this end result. So by just focusing on the hook first, you're really setting yourself up for having a better script. And then the next thing is the outline. So the outline being just kind of the general structure of the script. One way that I'm looking at this is actually baking in different type of narrative techniques. So like you may have heard the hero's journey before is one. There are different types of narrative arcs or narrative techniques, and having those influence the outline so it's kind of clear, what you should cover in the video. And then once you have that, then it's down to writing each section, and that's the part where like the normal writing tools, I think, are competitive, but that's just one part of it.
No, that's you actually laid it out really well. Because the thing is, a lot of people, at least for me, I would just experiment just for funsies, but when it comes to prompting these different writing tools, it literally just gives you a whole thing, like it's not asking for context of your title and thumbnail, it's not asking for context of the point of the idea for your avatar, just all like these little things that you have to make sure you prompt, but in the moment you want to get your work done, so it kind of skips that for you and you kind of forget as well. But what I like about Subscriber is it's like taking I wouldn't say it's taking hard work away, because you obviously still need to think and be a critical thinker as a YouTuber, but I do like how it's just chunking different steps of the process to make a full succinct script, rather than just spitting out a bunch of text and you're like, well, this is garbage. So that's something I can say I like about the product.
Yeah, I think that if AI was good enough to just write a whole script today, then people would just use the off-the-shelf tools. But it's not.
Yeah.
And even when it is better, there will always be opportunity for someone who puts a more personal touch to create something even better. So the way that I think about AI is the best script writers in the world don't need Subscriber. Like, they really don't. It's just that having an AI tool raises the floor for quality so that people who are newer, people who maybe have other things on their plate, or people who are looking to scale have a way to maintain a higher standard of quality while they do that. And I think for the foreseeable future, until we have this crazy artificial general intelligence, that there will always be room for people who want to spend more time in the process to achieve a better result than just using AI alone. So, I started this journey of finding the app that I wanted to build by building a script review tool where you'd paste in your entire script and it would give you feedback on how to improve it using, proven YouTube engagement tactics. And I actually built that, and I've got some really good feedback from users on that, and I may include it as part of the final Subscriber product. But what I realized is that there's a big problem with a software solution that works that way, and it's that you finish your script, you're probably behind schedule, your editor is probably, your voiceover person, if you're doing faceless, is probably already, chomping at the bit to get started. And so now you put your script into this tool and it gives you all this feedback and you're like, you're right, I could do that better, but now I need to just get this done so I don't have actual time to continue improving it. Now, some people might, really emphasize quality to the point where they're okay with that, but I think a lot of people don't have that kind of time. And so then I thought, what if I could just give you a way to upload your script and then press an enhance button? You know how in the 90s and the early 2000s, like all the action movies, they'd show like the hacker in the CIA office and they'd say enhance. and you just click
Yeah.
enhance and like the picture just gets better. Well, I thought, could we just do that for a script? And I spent about a week on it, and I'm not going to say it was impossible, but I also felt like that was maybe not the best route. And I said, look, if I can create these kind of tools, it seems like the best, most useful point to offer them to people is when they're ideating and just starting to create the script, giving them ideas. The hardest thing about writing is what? Staring at a blank page.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so if you can get ideas, uh, I think that's a good route. So I'm not trying to build a tool that writes your entire script for you. I'm trying to build a tool that just helps you do it faster and with greater confidence that you have something that's pretty good.
Yeah, I love that because for me, I don't treat these tools as, again, like you're saying, just write the entire thing. I treat it as like I guess you could say a writing assistant or a writing intern, or yeah, just like somebody that's helping me figure some things out. And for me, it's just like, okay, what are do these setups and payoffs make sense? Or based on this chunk of research I did for this video, should I include this or this? It's like
Mhm.
like you say, it's a tool that I use to converse and get feedback on. Because I can see the problem with the enhancing a script thing. I can see how that would be pretty difficult. Because even now there are tools that try to do that, and like you can highlight a piece of text in a paragraph, for example, because you want to chunk these things out. You don't want to do the whole thing. And even then it'll like make it worse than what it originally was. So I can see how
Yeah.
enhancing would be hard. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the problems with that is that currently, with the current AI models we have, which if someone's watching this a year from today, things will probably be very different. But like if you ask ChatGPT to write a YouTube script, it's not going to give you more than 400 or 500 words, and you can beg it to go slightly longer, and you won't get that. And people have the assumption that it can write a lot more because there's this thing called the context window, and that includes like how many words can be as part of the input and the output of the model, and it's much larger than something like 500 words. So people assume that they can get this like really big thing, and you can. So the one way you can use AI if you're like determined to write an entire script using AI is you ask it to do an outline, and then you ask it to do section by section, which will work if that's like what you're determined to do, is create an entire script using AI. But if you're trying to rewrite a script, that doesn't work because you need to give it the whole thing and have it write the whole thing. So part of what may be an issue with feedback on an existing script is that maybe the order of the content is just not right, or like you're giving the payoff too soon, or the hook doesn't match the grand payoff. And so if you can only write a little bit at a time using AI, that enhance button doesn't really seem to work that well. And so that's the challenge that I had.
Yeah. And this is like kind of a great transition into just how subscriber accounts for these things that we'll just say these subjective YouTube buzzwords that can be crucial for a script success. That's not saying they have to be used, but they are commonly used, such as, the storytelling or even a narrative structure, retention, pacing, etc. Like, I would feel that's even a little more difficult to account for because these are things that most, if not all, these writing tools outside of subscriber don't do. It's just like giving you content, but there's nothing interesting. It's not pacing you. It's not making you build up to that great payoff that gets us high when we're watching something. So how does subscriber really account for those
Yeah.
kinds of things?
One of the most interesting things I've seen as I've uh, been exploring YouTube videos that are outlier videos that work really well is that there's many videos that include these engagement tactics that we talk about, hooks and payoffs and curiosity gaps and pacing and all of these things. And then there's others that do really well that don't do any of that stuff. So uh, it doesn't really apply to like every type of content, and there are definitely lots of outliers where there's no re-engagement throughout the entire video. There's no CTAs and that sort of thing. But I think mixing in a little bit of that is certainly helpful for most people if they're not one of those outliers that like, to use the one that people always like to talk about, Sam Sulek, he's not thinking about like curiosity gaps as he's filming his videos, I'm sure. And but for a lot of people, it's a good strategy to like at least be thinking about it in that way. How do I keep people engaged? And again, this YouTube is unique in my mind in that it's long form video content where engagement is like super important, way more than movies and television shows. So I just find it very fascinating. And I wanted to learn more about it. So that's why I built this video breakdown tool, which is an early access feature of Subscriber, is because if I'm building the script writing tool, I need to understand, what kind of engagement tactics that different types of videos use. And the end goal here is to break down so many videos that when someone's creating a new script, and let's say it's a history documentary script, that we can just go look in this archive of all of these outlier videos and see what type of hooks perform best, what level of re-engagement, like how much re-engagement makes sense, what type of titles and thumbnails work best. And basically, that looking at that as more of a statistical thing than like an AI thing, but then using AI to understand those statistics and then come up with suggestions that are based on those things, as opposed to just suggestions that are based on millions of documents that the AI was trained on that are not necessarily related to YouTube.
So with this, like sticking with the I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Basically, the video essay about a historical event that happened, right? If we're using Subscriber, is it taking those examples from successful history videos that have done well, or is it just taking, kind of like you said, just outliers that have really good hooks that can potentially apply to this?
I think the data set needs to keep growing. So, part of the benefit of releasing this early access breakdown tool is that people are breaking down different videos, and all of those go into the data set that helps to feed the AI models. But over time, it'll be more specific. At first, it'll be somewhat generic, like, hey, if this is a documentary, like what types of things work best. But in the future, it could be, hey, if this is a history documentary, what length or what tone works best? Is it an informative tone, an educational tone, a conversational tone, those sorts of things? And the more specific that we can make it. But you want to make sure that there's enough examples to give the AI that, there's that you're not, introducing some sort of bias just by not having enough examples. And you also don't want to, I don't want to create a system that just encourages nothing but copycat content, you know? And I think that's important. Like, creativity is basically making interesting connections that haven't been made yet between, things that people didn't make connections to before. I think that's one way to define creativity. So, what I want to do is create a system where it's like, hey, here are some examples of the types of hooks that do well in history documentary videos. And by the way, here are some examples of hooks that do really well in other types of documentaries, like business documentaries or something completely different. And like mixing in a little bit of the familiar and the unfamiliar and having some of both, I think encourages creativity so that we're not just all creating the same content over time.
Yeah, we don't have to get too deep into it, but unfortunately, it's been like a thing I've been seeing of. It's like let's say someone in the United States or the UK makes a pretty good outlier video, but then you'll like see the exact same video translated into a different language with the exact same thumbnail, and it's like, well, it's kind of hard to combat that. And then I've been seeing lately, again, just copycats of the exact same video and video title and thumbnail packaging, but they just kind of shift the thumbnail a little bit. In which I
Yep.
commented on the guy's channel who has a few hundred subs trying to bank off of that. I was like, you literally copied off of this person's channel name. I wish I know it now, but hey. So I think the
Yeah.
concern that I mentioned on my interview questions was just it's like it sounds cool, but then it's also concern at the same time. And just the metaphor of becoming like a script writing DJ, because it, to me, and as described in your emails and your Twitter, it just suggests that there's like a high level of creative control and flexibility, which I like because you don't get that with other tools. But what exactly does that mean? And can you just talk about how Subscriber enables users to just mix and match content to create something new? Because you kind of talked about it. Let's just dig into the script writing DJ. Like, what does that mean for
Yeah.
Subscriber? What does it mean to mix and match content?
Oh, it's just a phrase I think to help people understand what's possible. But a very common piece of advice from YouTube strategists is uh, that a way to improve your chances of success is to find an outlier video that works and create something similar but with a unique angle. And I think that the unique angle part is what is missing in a lot of cases. Like when someone rips it and just puts it in a new language, I would argue that that's at least a unique angle. And although I'm sure, is extremely frustrating for the owners of the original channel, like it's at least one step above people who literally just create the same video concept in the same language with no unique angle. So in Subscriber, when you're creating a new script, that is the first thing it asks you is like, what's your unique angle? And maybe in the future, part of that could be giving you ideas on other angles to cover that are relevant to your audience, which might be a little bit different audience than that original channel. But the way that I'm thinking about this is giving you control over what parts you use as inspiration and which parts are unique and you're starting from new. And um, when you're remixing an existing video with Subscriber, it won't be like, let me just copy sentence by sentence and paraphrase, which I've seen some of the YouTube automation gurus say to use different tools to literally just paraphrase and call it a day. Instead, it's like, okay, what is the video concept? What is the tone? What types of hooks are used? And maybe you can pick some of those things that you want to reuse. And then the rest of it is like new. So it's creating a brand new script. It's not just paraphrasing an existing one. That is certainly not a goal, not the way that I intend this to work. And what I may do, and I'm not sure about yet because I'm not that far along, is like once we amass this data set of what works for different types of videos, even surface information like, hey, 62% of history documentaries use an informative tone, and 18% use an educational or conversational tone, and surfacing that information so that you could actually make it a more informed decision about whether you want to stick with the pack or you want to try a different angle and see what works. And I think that that's a good way to tackle it, because I certainly don't just want to make copycat content.
Yeah. And it's just kind of, it's similar to how, at least the way I kind of think about it, because it's all different, right? Like, visual AI art is different than AI created writing or AI created whatever, you know? So do you fear that this tool might be doing something similar to how AI generated art works? And which it takes from artists, like millions of artists, combines their work and just creates something new and different. Do you think Subscriber might do the same, or are there ways you're gonna try and combat this?
Um, yeah, I think to some degree it's doing the same, but uh, but not to the degree of like reusing exact sentences and things like that, which, you know, uh, we've seen some issues with AI tools. Like, you know, the New York Times is suing OpenAI, for example, because they have a few specific instances where they found like exact content that OpenAI has spit out that is literally content from their news articles. And so when I think about training Subscriber, it's not necessarily on like the exact phrasing of the script, it's on the structure of it. And in that way, it's not just straight up plagiarism. It's just helping you dissect content that has worked and then create more that is sort of like that in ways that you control, and in ways that you can make informed decisions on what you're copying and what you're remixing and adding something new. Just like, you know, there's uh, like the concept of a DJ. I mean, there's so many different versions of popular songs that DJs remix, and there's plenty of cases where they just make it their own song. Now, there's some where they just like add a different beat to it, and that's it. But the really good DJs, they really take the time to make it their own, and I think that's what we'll continue to see. It's not any different.
Yeah, like I could say that you can kind of associate it to movies, you know? It's like, because whether we inherently think about it or not in the moment, a lot of movies are based on the same tropes that have been around for like a really long time. Like, you know, like the revenge story. Like, if for me, I've been on a Quentin Tarantino binge. For the first time, I watched Django Unchained. I love Kill Bill. I watched it since I was a kid. Probably shouldn't have watched it as a kid.
Mhm.
And then watching Django Unchained, I was like, oh, this is a revenge story. This is like a hero revenge story, and I'm totally okay with that. And I'm sure those movies are based on other revenge stories, and you know, it goes for any movie that we love to see.
But I really think it's like a workflow tool. And if it had no AI, but it was just a workflow tool, it would still be helpful. Now, would it be helpful enough that people are willing to pay money for it? I think some yes, some no, depending on what type of scale they have. But the AI component is really just what makes it new and exciting and more than just a workflow tool. And it's the combination of those two things that I think make it a compelling offer, because if you just have the AI stuff, then it's basically just like a super prompting tool, and you know, you can probably just get by with ChatGPT. And if you just have the workflow stuff, then it's like a souped up Google Docs or Notion or something, where you know there's people out there who are already using Notion in a souped up way. But the combination of the two and then the incorporation of what actually works on YouTube is what I think will be useful and valuable for people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like this argument I've been seeing a lot under these AI tool kind of discussions. Is just, you know, because I'm only 26, but I guess back then when it came to design and stuff, there was just a hesitant to revolt against using Photoshop, and now look at it. It's like the most widely used design tool amongst graphic designers, other designers everywhere.
Yeah, there's a whole new frontier which no one is really jumping on yet because it's like, days and weeks old, uh, is the concept of like uploading a video to an AI model and asking questions. Yesterday, there was a demo video from Gemini 1.5 Pro that was released by Google. And they uploaded a 45-minute film. Now, it was an old silent movie, so it had a low frame rate. What they're saying is that like a normal frame rate video, because it has a lot more content, today you can only do like 6 to 8 minutes. Still impressive. But anyway, they uploaded this 45-minute video, and then they asked a very specific question about at one point in the video, someone takes a ticket out of their pocket. And so the question was, tell me where in the movie this ticket was taken out, or this piece of paper was, and then tell me what you know about it. And then the AI model, I think it took like a minute or so, but it looked through the whole video and it found that this piece of paper was like a train ticket that was taken out of someone's pocket. And then they showed exactly the frame where you can see the details of the ticket, and it explained a little bit about it. That was like earth-shattering. Like, that's insane that it can do that. And then the next thing they did was they did like a little drawing on paper, like it might have been like Microsoft Paint drawing, actually. And they drew like a few lines, and it was just this little round thing with some streaks coming down. And they said, show me this point in the movie and explain what's going on. And it took another minute or so to answer. And basically, there was like a big water reservoir that had water coming down it. And then this is like an old silent film, so it's all black and white. But you can very, very clearly see it was exactly what was in this, super basic, like almost kid type of drawing. And so the capabilities for analyzing content are like getting so crazy so fast. So what Subscriber is doing with like understanding and analyzing content and helping you create better content based on that, I think is just like one of the first forays that we have into it. And I think the top YouTubers have probably already done these types of analysis using whatever, tools that they've had available over the past few years. But all I'm doing is just using the tools that are available now to kind of open this up to more people. And it's just going to be something that everyone is using to understand how to get better and improve.
And we don't have to get too technical. Because remember, these are creators we're talking to. But I asked you this over email, and I thought it was just such a great answer. I'd want people to know as well here. But so, just how are you, again, buzzword, but how are you training the AI to learn how to write from a YouTuber's perspective? Like, I don't think you're doing this anymore. I feel like this was maybe at the beginning stage, but you're not uploading well-written, well-performing scripts. Like, you're finding ways to make sure that Subscriber takes from outlier videos and applies that to your kind of video structure. And are you using a GPT, like, long-winded way of asking, how does this all work in the back end to, like, make sure that the product is doing as advertised, which I think it is,
Yeah.
but still good to know what's happening behind the scenes.
Well, I have an opportunity, but also a big problem. And the opportunity is that these AI models are getting so good so fast. Like, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of money riding on this. And, yesterday was one good example. You mentioned this breakthrough technology that OpenAI came out with. They probably rushed to announce that because Google had just released their new model. And so there's this breakneck pace, which is awesome for innovation. But the big problem is that for someone like me, it makes it risky to get tied into one specific model forever, because There are constant advancements. And so the way that I'm building this is in a way where I can be flexible and nimble as these models improve. And, basically what I'm focusing on now is like building a great workflow tool where all the buttons work and everything makes sense. And then once this product is launched, it shifts to much more of a data, type of challenge where I'm constantly evaluating different models and different approaches to prompting and fine tuning and training so that the the content that it generates gets better and better. So I view it as like this kind of long-term, testing and experimentation process and being nimble to try out different models and not really get hung up on one thing. I am using GPT-4, which is what powers ChatGPT in some cases. I'm using GPT 3.5, which is the older version. I'm using Claude, which is in my experience better at creative writing than GPT-4, but there's a lot of cases where if content is a little bit edgy, then Claude doesn't want to work with it because that was their whole reason, that team's whole reason from leaving OpenAI is because they wanted to create AI with more guardrails on it. I want to use these new Google models. I've tried open source models. There's a lot out there. And, it's just a trade-off between getting really good at one versus being nimble because there's this constant experimentation. And I think that that's part of my job in building this thing is like, helping creatives not have to do that work of like constantly figuring out what's the best AI tool to use. So I don't remember exactly what I said on email, but step one is if you are remixing content instead of starting from scratch, then just understanding existing outlier videos and what works for them. And so AI is great at picking out the hooks, picking out the CTAs, the title frameworks, and all of that sort of stuff. So that's one part of it. The second part is helping you brainstorm your content so that you're not staring at a blank page when you're writing. And then the third thing is once you have written something, getting some feedback on how you can improve it. So those are the three different ways.
I think the biggest thing that I've had a question about, and many others are probably going to have a question about, is just what are the success metrics to measure, or that you're currently measuring already with beta users for subscriber, to just know if this product's just giving good script advice and outputs.
Yeah. Well, the hard part about that is it's subjective until you hit publish, right? Like you could take a look at two scripts or script feedback, and one expert might say this is good feedback, and others might say it's bad feedback. But it's really at the point of publish where if your next video is more of an outlier than the last because you're seeing that the help with packaging, was useful or that your retention is higher, then, it's hard because you can't A/B test it, but you might see a steady improvement in some of those things. And that is the goal. So I've gotten feedback from a few beta testers who have said that they've seen positive improvements, but ultimately, I think time will tell, once the product is fully released. And I'm not going to make wild claims about that now, but the goal is faster, better YouTube scripts. So I know for sure that I can help with faster. Like that is the workflow tools and the creativity. And it's the better part, which remains to be seen. But I'm pretty confident in it because I think, again, subscriber is not writing all your content for you. It's helping you understand how to improve it. And so as long as I'm incorporating real trusted advice, proven engagement tactics, and then you're taking that and improving your work, then I don't see why it shouldn't improve.
Yeah. And the last big question I had before we plug subscriber is, we're kind of moving to, and I like that you mentioned Hollywood earlier, because it is true. I think YouTube is kind of moving in that direction, in the sense that, like, the Mr. Beast area is, I mean, it's still thriving, don't get me wrong, but I would say it's kind of slowing down in a sense of more creators are really starting to focus on just a really good story. And it doesn't mean it has to be a video essay. It could just be like a Ryan Trahan kind of thing of we're going on this 30-day penny adventure, and there's just different little nuances that make it just so intoxicating to watch, I guess. Maybe wrong word, but for me, when it comes to watching certain video essayists, the audio visual elements are kind of movie-esque, if you will. Like, there's just little sound effects, there's reverb effects, there's just the way that B-roll tells the story more than your usual creators talking, in which maybe you might not hear the creator talk for maybe a couple minutes throughout the video, and that's what YouTube's kind of heading towards with a small portion of creators, hopefully more, because I love that content. But I'd like to know, like, how, if so, does subscriber count for, like, audio visual aspects of a video? And this could be as simple as, like, telling you where specific B-roll or SFX could be placed.
Yeah. This is a challenge that I discovered almost immediately when giving access to my script feedback tool to a handful of people, is that you may have a 10 or 20-second clip from some other content that you're putting in, and that is a real important part of your video. And so if the tool is giving you feedback on the script, but it's missing the fact that you started the video with this like really engaging clip, which was from somewhere else, but that was the actual hook, then it may have trouble and say like, hey, your hook should be better. And I've thought about a few different ways of handling that. The short answer is, like, on day one when subscriber launches, it's not really going to handle that well. But I think that's a good area for improvement, where like you can actually annotate within your script where you've got other content, and so at least it's all in one place and you can see it there and understand those things. That would be like the next step. And then the next step after that would be actually analyzing that content, whether it's images or videos, using AI to like understand what's in that, and like if there's a transcript, pulling that in, for example. So ultimately you're building this script that includes multimedia from other places. So I think AI can help with that too. It's just for me, like just a step-by-step process in terms of priorities.
Yeah, exactly,
But yeah,
because you can't build everything. So, like, you have to build
yeah,
the features for a specific subset of people.
for people who are creating videos that include lots of clips of different things, subscriber on day one is going to be harder to use because it's just not pulling in that context. So it is absolutely a problem that needs to be solved, because not all scripted videos are 100% scripted. Probably most are not, and so it has to account for that fact. The other like big learning that I had almost immediately was that people want to create videos in many languages, not just English. And so that's probably the most frequently asked question, is will subscriber write scripts in other languages? And the answer is yes, because these AI models, are trained on many different languages, and it's really not that difficult to ask it to produce a script in a different language. But those are the two like big key learnings that I realized right away.
Yeah, like, to just finish my thoughts, I'm definitely excited for the actual writing portion and just the script writing feedback portion, because, yeah, like I said, I like to study videos, and when I studied yesterday using Subscriber was, I think it's titled The Pepsi Contest That Killed 5 People, and yeah, it broke down all the assumptions I had about it, of like, it starts with that hard-hitting hook, it has the curiosity gaps that keep you watching from start to finish, because the video could have gave you the answer in like 2 minutes or so, but yeah, Subscriber does a really good job of breaking things down that people might not have otherwise noticed. So So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited for it. And any last finishing words or things you want to plug? Because I'll have everything you want in the description for this video.
So it's, as we're recording this, it's February 16th,
Mm-hmm.
2024. And basically, I am, I guess you could say, in monk mode right now, if I'm using Iman Godzi, famous YouTuber's phrase. But I'm in monk mode, just sort of building out this app, and it's going to take me a little bit longer, and I'll release it in phases. But I encourage people to just kind of follow along. If you go to subscriber.ai, that's subscriber without the E, .ai, there is a way that you can sign up and try this breakdown tool, which we've tried, or which we've talked about several times on this call. And there's a way to try that for free. And that just gets you in the door so that when the product fully launches, that you will be the first to know about it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Gil, taking out time out of your monk mode stage to yeah, just shed some light on a tool that I definitely will think help and change the YouTube script writing process. So thank you.
Thanks, Miko.